Hey, just wanted to share my experience of 7 weeks following what's being called the sugar diet. If you haven't heard about this, it's all over YouTube and social media among several people in the fitness industry talking about what's called, again, the sugar diet. That's not the original name of the original from the guy who wrote this diet or created this diet, but that's what's being called. I did not eat a bunch of sugar and candy. For those of you who've heard about the sugar diet, I focused on fruit juice, starches, and it's a very low protein, low fat, very low fat diet. And a lot of people talking about the weight loss they're experiencing. Fat loss, reduced or improves insulin sensitivity, reduced fasting glucose, and people coming off of their diabetic meds following this sugar diet, but losing 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds. And so I wanted to give it a shot because I'm already fairly lean and I wanted to do it well. So I measured it. I did a scan. It wasn't a DEXA scan, but it was a pretty good bioimpedance scan that I've used before that usually tracks within a percent or so, at most 2% of a DEXA scan when I've used them around the same time. And I trust it. And I used it before as the starting point. And at the end of the 7 weeks, actually 7 weeks and 3 days to be more precise, that I did this diet. With actually in the middle of that, I want to say in the middle of that, had about 7 travel days, about 5 days one time, about 2 or 3 days on another, in which I couldn't really be real strict with the diet. They're almost like refeeds because I was traveling, had events going on, and just was not on the diet. So within that 7 weeks, there was about 7 a week, 8 days maybe of going off plan. So not super strict. And so again, focusing though on whole food as much as possible with a few things in there like juice, sometimes some jelly, honey. I want to be specific, honey and agave nectar definitely used to add some fructose because this diet is, or the effects of the diet is really driven by the presence of fructose in hitting the liver and just in the cells, stimulating what's called FGF21. It's a hormone that stimulates fat burning and almost fat wasting to the point that you have elevated heat, right? Elevated thermogenesis, burning off this fat, not necessarily all making more ATP. So you're really wasting fat. Not a bad thing if you're just trying to lose weight. So results, again, with this bioimpedance scan, I have the results here I'm looking at. In that 7-week time, I lost, according to this machine, 6 pounds of fat. Now, it wasn't even 6 pounds on their scale. It was about 3 or 4 pounds, 3.5 pounds. And that may have been varied a bit by what I was wearing, but I don't think so. I think it was the influx of glycogen and the water. So I'm carrying a little more water, obviously eating carbs, but so the weight loss on the scale was not as great as the fat loss it detected. And some of you are saying, well, low protein, high sugar, did you lose muscle as well? Is that part of the weight loss? This machine actually detected 0.8 pound increase in my lean mass. So it was like from 89.4 pounds to 90.2 pound increase in muscle mass, lean mass. But it was I went from 207, came in around 207, and it said at 13, this machine had me at 13.2% body fat. May have been a little high, but okay. When at the measurement at 7 weeks, it had me at 10.5. I weighed 204 pounds with a 6 pound loss in body fat, a 0.8 pound increase in muscle mass, which again, I know is not muscle tissue. That's more glycogen in the muscle creating fullness. In 7 weeks, I'm not going to put on a pound of muscle tissue, especially at 55 years old. So it works. Needless to say, a low protein, low fat, very high carb diet burned fat. Now I was eating, the taste of the sweetness, really, it kills your appetite. So I'm not just shoveling down my usual amount of calories. It's just almost impossible during the phases where I was eating just carbs. Now, so as I got used to it, I started this, it was very much carb through the first part of the day and then protein in the evening. Then I did a day and a half, like a full day of carb with low protein, low fat, and then a half day the next day where I did the high carb, and then I had some protein and maybe a little fat came in at the end of the day for dinner. And by protein, I mean meat protein that would stimulate muscle protein synthesis, so it has the branched chain amino acids in it. During the day, what you actually can use, I used a powder form of a beef gelatin. So instead of collagen, it was gelatin, because that doesn't seem to interfere with the FGF21 production because there's no branched chain amino acids in it. And so I saved that meat for that day and a half. Then I did 2.5. And eventually I got where I was doing 4.5 days of the high carb, with on the 5th day having add more protein in for dinner, not as much as I usually would have, maybe 60% of my body weight in grams of protein. So it's really might be 120, 140 grams of protein on that 5th day. And then on the 6th day, I ate protein all day, like a refeed, allowing a little more fat in, but still keeping the fat under control, trying to keep the fat under 40 grams. During the fast part and those days where I was being strict with the high carb, low fat, low protein, my fat was often below 15 grams, sometimes below 10 grams. So pretty low fat, which caused my body to really need to burn more fat for the fat that it needs, right? So it was remarkable in that I wasn't super hungry. It is in studies shown to having this high carb, very low protein, very low fat diet stimulate the metabolism, actually increase the metabolism by about 20% in a lot of studies. Even on the half days where someone might just do high carb, low protein, low fat for the first half of the day, or like say from morning until maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon, they saw 10, 12, 14% increase in metabolism. So there's an increase in metabolic rate, but because you're taking in the carbohydrates and you have the insulin going up and down, you're going to have lower stress hormones. So stress hormones are certainly stimulated to some degree, but much lower than if you're doing a low carb diet. Because the stress hormones are elevated on a low carb diet to help stimulate the production of glucose by breaking down lean mass or muscle protein and turning that into glucose. Well, you're getting plenty of glucose. I mean, I noticed right away, not only were my lifts, my strength training was getting, I was actually getting stronger and feeling fuller, but I just started feeling fuller right away. So my muscles started like filling up with glycogen, and I got worked out with weight training 3 to 4 times a week, usually 3. Still doing the cardio, still doing lots of walks, doing some high intensity stuff in there. So you keep working out. The more you can do, the better, I think. I mean, more consistent you can be, the better, I should say, because you want to use that glucose and put it into muscle. But no issues with recovery. And it's showing, according to these scans, no muscle loss. Actually, so I had more muscle, right, with glycogen in it. And just for verification, I happened to be on a trip, and one of those travel days was down to Florida. I got a DEXA scan while I was down there, just with the guy I was on a podcast with. And the DEXA scan put me, this is about halfway, it was about 4 weeks into the 7-week period. I had the DEXA put me at 10.5% body fat. So for reference in pounds, I started with the first scan, it had me at 27.2 pounds of body fat. At the end of the 7 weeks, that same kind of scan put me at 21.2. So that's a 6-pound loss of fat. At that 4-week period, when I got the DEXA scanned me at 22.5 or so pounds of fat. So it wasn't too far off. That DEXA kind of tells me I was over the target. There might be some variation with that other scanner being, not as accurate as a DEXA, but I'm in the ballpark. And so I'm pretty happy with a 6-pound loss of fat in a 7-week period on someone who's already pretty lean and active, and I wasn't really hungry. Like, actually, you get sick of eating the sweet stuff sometimes, and you're like, and that's why I might have a little starch. I'd have a lot of high energy, wasn't low energy, wasn't bogging. As long as you keep eating, right? Blood sugar does go up and down a bit, but so you have to sometimes eat a little more often because you're going to digest those carbs more. But I actually had a lot of energy when I was eating. I mean, like, it's almost like climbing the walls energy. Like, you just want to get stuff done. It's pretty cool, especially considering you're losing fat, right? One of the easiest fat losses I've ever had and seen, and the fastest. Oh, as a side reference, my wife was also doing this at the same time. And not as extreme, not doing the 4 or 5 days in a row of the all carb, but she would do a day and a half, at the most 2.5 days. And a lot of the days are just half carb with the protein at the end of the day. Lost about 10 pounds at this point over the last, say, 8 weeks. It's been pretty good. Again, we're both in our mid-50s. So to be able to lose that much weight and it be fat, like you can see it was all her waist and hips, and her arms are much leaner. But weight that had kind of stuck around the waist and hips, which happens in your 50s, fallen off. I can see mine right away around the love handle area, the back fat, right? That lower back fat, that dropped off, started dropping off right away. More vein, more vascular, more pump in the upper body muscles. You could see it. I could see more veins in my legs and abs by the end of it. The big thing that really is standing out to me that started happening right away and has now continued to improve, even though I'm not doing the fast anymore, I'm keeping a very high carb morning, mid and early afternoon, and doing the protein in the evening, without doing the long days of carbs for the last week or so. My sleep is improving dramatically. I don't just mean how I feel. I mean, with my Oura Ring, the sleep data is improving. Now, once upon a time, I promoted low carb for 20 years. And then I realized I hit a wall with low carb, intermittent fasting, fasted workouts, too much cortisol going. I just found myself overtrained, run down, bad sleep. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, was off the charts. Sex hormone binding globulin was too high. So that's a sign of cortisol, too much stress. So I added carbs in. This is about 2 years ago. Increased my carb intake from about 100, 150 a day to more like 250 to 300 a day. Tested that on a blood test. I did the labs 10 months after doing that. My blood sugar actually improved. So my fasting blood sugar would often be in the low to mid 90s in that low carb and low that fasting. And which is not, you see that a lot, right? You see with high glucose like that out of range, because we're supposed to not be above 85 fasting glucose. In those 94s, even 100s with a lot of carnivore and keto people, low carb people in general, especially if they're very active. But my fasting glucose came down from what was usually the mid 90s, low to mid 90s, to 79 after increasing my carb intake from 250 to 300 a day from back in the low hundreds. And the fasting insulin didn't change. So my fasting insulin had been 3.1, 3. This was a 2.9. So one of the lowest fasting insulins I've seen. And my sleep did improve. Well, so I start this sugar diet with all these carbs, low protein, very low fat. And one thing that hadn't changed for my sleep scores was that my HRV had remained very low. Your HRV is kind of the gaps between your heart rate beats. So whether if it's super steady, like if you're right on 0.8 seconds, you get another beat, right? Or 1 second, you get every beat every second. That'd be a lower HRV. Higher HRV is more variability, heart rate variability. So variability in time between the beats. And that's usually an indication of more engagement of the parasympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, when you're during the day, get stuff done, it's more steady. Parasympathetic, when you're rest and digest mode, you want to sleep, you want more variability. That means you're in a more restful state, less cortisol. Well, even with increasing my carbs to 250 to 300, 325, right in there, that still had not improved. I go on this sugar diet, and within the first week, I'm seeing my HRV go from 11, 12, 13 on average to up like basically my old highs were my new lows. So I went from being, 15 being a low up in the 18, 19, close to 20 sometimes with the HRV, and my heart rate, my heart rate at night, my lowest heart rate at night, sleeping, would occasionally dip into the 40s. Like I occasionally get a 48, 49, but most of the time, especially over the last year or so, 50s. It's in the mid to low 50s pretty often, rarely dipping into 40s. Go on the sugar fast. Within a week, like I said, I'm up in the teens, higher teens to 20 HRV, heart rate starts dipping more into the 40s. By the end of it, and including it now, even now, when I'm not doing the fast, I'm just kind of doing the half days, I'm seeing, so it was a 50% increase, a 50% improvement in my HRV before. Now it's doubled. So now most of my HRVs are in the 22. I had a 29 the other night. I haven't seen 29 in years on my HRV. And HRV is very individual. Some of you may be getting 40s and 50s, no problem. That's great. I'm happy for you. That's not me. That's not me. It might have been me 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. Not me now. But I'm seeing HRVs in the 20s, and I get 6, 7 days, nights in a row, really, with my lowest heart rate at night down in the 40s, like I'm seeing 44 to 49 for 5, 6 days in a row. Have a rough night where maybe I ate a little too late, then it pops up in the 50s, but still with the HRV in the 20s. So I'm getting HRVs in the 20s instead of 11, 12, 13, 14. I'm getting 20, 21, 28, 29. Heart rates 44 to 49 instead of in the 50s. That's amazing. That tells me my body is getting more rest. I'm getting better night's sleep, more deep sleep. It's improving because I have more glucose in my liver, keeping me going all night, keeping me at rest all night, allowing my body to relax. Lower cortisol levels from the elevated, because that's one of the benefits of glucose. It lowers the cortisol, lowers the stress hormones, lowers the glucagon, and I don't have to make as much glucose, right? Because I'm eating it. And I'm gonna tell you, I started tracking my glucose when I got back on the diet where I'm doing like half day and then protein at night. I'm eating a little less protein, definitely keeping the fat low, fat below 30 grams ideally, 40 at the most, but ideally below 30 grams. Protein, I'm eating it, more steadily, probably 120 to 140 grams a day, and I weigh 205. Carbs, I'm trying to hit at least 400. I'm shooting for 400. If I can get over 400 to 500, amazing. Like it takes some work, takes some thought after being a low carb and even going to the 250 to 300. It's like I've thought, like, how do I get more carbs in? Completely different approach than what I've had in the past. But it feels amazing. My workouts are better. I'm getting stronger and my sleep is better. I mean, it's hard to argue with that. This is data. That's not like I feel better at sleep. This is data. Sleep data improving with the higher carb, lower protein, low fat, and I'm staying lean. Like the fat staying off. I'm staying lean, even though I'm not doing those carb fasts. Staying lean, keeping the fat off, sticking with the low fat diet. I'm all about the low fat diet. I think in general, what I recommend, if you don't want to do the sugar fast, the sugar diet, great. Whole food, which is what I'm doing. I eat a lot of whole food with some powdered protein there, like the gelatin, which I don't think is a big deal. A lot of people supplement with gelatin and collagen, get the glycine in, that kind of thing. Higher carb, like 60, 55, 60%, 65% of my calories. About 20-ish, 23, 25% of the calories coming from protein, 10% from fat, occasionally go up to 20, not even close to 20 actually lately. So staying below 10% from fat, 10 to 15%. So those fluctuate a bit day to day, but that's generally where it's at and very, very lean. Now, is the sugar fast meant to be sustainable long term? No. It's meant to help you lose fat with results that you can see. Like I wouldn't do that long. I did it for 7 weeks. That was hard. I'm coming back did refeeds every week to refuel some healthy fats and proteins and then went back into it. Because like I said, I do the 4.5 days, 5th night, dinner, 6th day, 4 meals a day. with protein, animal protein. Then after that day, I did another half day protein, half day carb, and then protein at night, and then went back into the carb fast, essentially. Again, mostly whole food, fruit, sweet potatoes, rice, honey, agave nectar, juice. That was the bulk of what I ate. And some veggies at night just because I want something salty, right? Like cucumbers, tomatoes with vinegar on them. If I ate a potato, I put vinegar instead of oil, avoiding oils, avoiding fats, keeping fats below 10 grams. And sometimes some of those days, other than the gelatin, I mean, I wasn't having any protein. It was just the gelatin. And maybe 30 to 60 grams of gelatin in smoothies. So drinking smoothies. And you lose the fat. And again, you see more and more people saying they're reversing insulin resistance. Their fasting glucose is coming down. They're coming off their meds off on this sugar diet. Terrible name, but that's what it is. You're using glucose. Glucose and sugar has become a dirty word in the diet industry. Unfortunately, because it's really not, I've known for 5 years now, that's not what's causing diabetes and insulin resistance and obesity. That's coming from our processed food, which is all the processed ingredients, especially the seed oils, driving that oxidative stress. My thought was sugar, carbs, maybe if you're insulin resistant, those are good to avoid, but if you're healthy, you can have glucose and carbs and you're good. Like I said, it improved my fasting glucose without hurting my fasting insulin. But now I'm seeing the low fat and now that I'm seeing decades of research and data and history of correcting insulin resistance, hypertension, obesity with a very high carb, low fat, very low fat, and even low protein diets. We have decades of research of this being a successful way to reverse insulin resistance and all the other things that come with metabolic disease. So it's time, I'm definitely rethinking things. I'm like learning so much more about things that I preached low carb for 20 years for my weight loss clients. I'm like having to swallow my words. This is crazy. It's unbelievable, but I'm seeing the results. I already tested my blood sugar by increasing my carbs. Now increase the carbs even more, and it's improving my sleep with data that's recorded in my Oura Ring app. So, I think it's time for those of you who have been low carb, played with low carb, think sugar's the devil. Think again. We've been misled. And I have friends in the low carb, carnivore, keto space. I just hosted a carnivore documentary. I'm sympathetic. I'm sympathetic to the mindset, and to the thought, and to the around this, because I have the same interpretation of how to handle glucose and with insulin resistance and health, and everything's been flipped on its head. Everything I thought I knew over the last 20 plus years flipped on its head. I'm sticking with a low fat to stay lean, low fat, moderate protein, very moderate protein, high carb diet. It feels better. My sleep's better. I'm leaner. So I'm obviously not putting on fat or becoming insulin resistant. I've already tested that. My other blood work. I'm looking forward to my next round of labs after doing this sugar fast and super low fat for a while. Give it a little more time. I'm looking forward to those labs as well. So don't judge a book by its cover or by the title, Sugar Diet. Look into more research. Look at Mark Bell's stuff. Look at what Jay Feldman's talking about. Look what Jay Campbell was talking about with it. And it's really, there's a guy, Joe English. You call Joe English his handle on Instagram. His real name is Joe Bentley. He's done interviews with a lot of these guys. He's the one that created the initial diet. He uses it for bodybuilders to lean out for competition. And he has an ebook that explains exactly how to do it properly and all the ins and outs and the downfalls. And he acknowledging this is not supposed to be a long-term sustainable thing. But he also doesn't believe there is such a thing as a long-term sustainable diet. The body adapts to everything. Whether low carb may have worked for you at first, it's not going to continue to work for you, right? We have all the thyroid issues that come with that, right? Higher or low testosterone eventually, right? Initially, You get some, because you're creating an elimination diet, essentially, you're getting rid of some crap, hopefully. That shows improvement, and there's a stress response to it. But then you have the thyroid issues, the lower thyroid, the lower testosterone, the elevated glucose being produced from the cortisol, glucagon, and adrenaline that have to be amped up to turn that protein into glucose. So those are downsides that come over time. And I hit that wall. I hit that wall with the fasting workouts and intermittent fasting and low carb. Didn't have to even be keto or carnivore, just hit it with low carb. So no diet that creates an extreme result is sustainable, because your body will eventually adapt. It tries to reach homeostasis, and once you hit homeostasis, you lose the benefits, or the benefits greatly diminish, and you're left with just the risks, which increase over time, again, from your body trying to adapt to it. So maybe the ideal diet isn't one that you stay with all the time, but one that fluctuates, one that cycles, that goes in and out, that changes, right? To keep your body from getting used to it, from homeostasis, until you find your maintenance level and you want to just hang out there and you're fine. But understand, anything that creates a big result is probably not sustainable as your body adapts to it. So that's why I got back in, moved away from it, got back into a more, and I'm figuring out what's ideal for me to maintain the leanness I want, and the muscle I want to keep, and the energy I want, and the sleep benefits, which have been probably my biggest issue or vulnerability for several years, is the quality of my sleep. And it's improving over time. It was an initial jump within the first week, again, so initial improvement, and the improvements have just continued over the last 2 months. And they're still continuing, even though I'm not doing the extreme, like the sugar fast part of it. So it's pretty incredible. And I'm going to put a link below to my version of it, what I did, and how if you want to follow it, check it out. But it's going to be, maybe I'll call it a fruit diet. I haven't named it yet. So the fruit diet, I think it's more of a hunter-gatherer diet, because it would make more sense that people would be out gathering, right, eating fruit until they made a kill, then they got to eat meat, lean meat. Once again, wild game is going to be leaner than your cow fattening on a pasture. So a lean meat with lots of fruit and tubers in between sounds very much like a hunter-gatherer diet to me, and the ones that we see examples of current indigenous tribes. So very high carb, lower fat, even moderate to lower protein diets is what we see in indigenous tribes when we really look closely. So this is a much more natural diet. So again, don't have a name for it. Look for the link below, and I'll have a name for it by the time the link gets there. And check it out. Try it for yourself. Experiment. Have with an open mind. But if you're eating whole food, and even with some juice and some honey and things like that, you're not going to get disease. You're not going to get disease from that. We have thousands of years of people eating high carbohydrates, honey, juices for, with no disease, no examples of disease. The metabolic disease is modern since the 20th century. It's the processed food. So if you're trying to lose weight or reverse the metabolic disease, this could be your option. If you're like me, you're just kind of athletic and you want to take off a few pounds, a great option. Absolutely. Works well with your workouts. All right. Take a look at the link. Let me know what you think.